I think a lot of people want to just get to the end very quickly nowadays. Slots was a very small part of the business, albeit growing. If you look at that now, it's now the largest vertical in the UK and I for Flutter is casino, and now it's 80% slots. Just be exposed to as many things as possible.
Gavin, welcome to Diary of an iGaming Executive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Talk to me about Willow Park Capital. Had a quick look at the website, which is probably winner of the most concise website in iGaming at the moment. Not a lot to go on, but I'm guessing you sort of keep your cards close to your chest. But this is your opportunity. What does it do? What's it about?
Yeah, so started a couple of years ago, and to be honest, it was more as a vehicle to pay me minimum wage in Malta, so I could say I have a job. But when I left Evolution, what I wanted to do, my background was in private equity. That's where I started in investment banking, and then went to private equity in Ireland. So I always wanted to get back into the investment side, and having worked on the, let's say, in an operational role for several years, I felt like I had a kind of a breadth of knowledge about how the industry worked. So wanted to get back to investing in kind of high potential startups. And obviously, you know, the industry being what it is, I don't think I need necessarily a website is how you're going to find those businesses. But yeah, so I've been wholly focused on that for the last couple of years. I've invested in about 7 companies, and yeah, it's been very, very interesting because you get a much broader, you know, the overview of the industry, and you're much wider because I'm in everything from land-based to B2C to B2B to sports gaming. So now, you know, I feel like I have a very good overview of what's going on in the wider gaming industry. So it's been quite interesting in that respect, rather than being very narrowly focused through one entity, you know.
Yeah, and is it just gaming, or are you looking opportunities elsewhere as well?
No, solely on the gaming side. So that's all I've done. Certainly on the Willow Park side, it's been solely focused on anything in the iGaming space, or not even iGaming. As I said, I've done land-based deals as well, so it's just anything that touches the gambling space.
So, okay, betting and gaming, but what are you looking for in an investment? And talk to me also about how you become an investor. Obviously, having a big pot of cash is quite important, but what else do you need, and what are you looking for in an investment?
Yeah, funny. I think what I'm looking for in an investment has evolved over the 2 years that I've been doing it. At the start, and it's a good question, because at the start you kind of say, oh, I want to invest in things. And then you get shown a lot of things, or people come to you and you're like, no, I'm not interested, or that doesn't work. But it's very hard to narrow down what does work, right? People say, you know, you say it does work because X, Y, Z, but trying to like pin down, this is what I'm interested in. Actually, it's taken quite a while to refine that into something that is clear to me, right? And I think what I've learned over time is, what interests me is startups with management teams that have maybe first-time management teams who've got strong product knowledge or domain expertise, but because I think what I've learned is I'm quite hands-on with the investments that I'm in. And so someone who needs kind of, let's say, operational assistance, and but with a management team who are very credible, who've done it before, and where I feel that I can add value to it. So I've looked at, there's nothing that I've invested in where I've just been a passive role, or what I found is, you know, investors that, or let's say people who have done it before, have a very clear vision on what they want to do. I don't feel necessarily that I can add value to that situation. So there's been a lot of very interesting businesses that I've looked at kind of going, I don't see where you know what you're doing. This is a good company, but it's not where I can add value. So I think what over time, what I've learned is the things that interest me is when there's a management team who have a good track record, who have an interesting idea, we'll kind of go, how can you help on sales or licensing, or, you know,
more to it than just money.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I think of over time. It's like where I feel I can have an impact just by working with them.
Yeah, got it. Okay. You probably don't want to talk about all of them for obvious reasons, but can you talk about any of the businesses you have invested in, and how are they performing, and what you're sort of getting out of that at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So obviously Octoplay, I got involved in fairly early in their journey, which is the former colleagues from Red Tiger, and that's been an incredibly interesting experience, because again, it's a team who have been very successful through Red Tiger, very successful when they were within NetEnt, even in terms of the impact they had there. And then, taking a small, like I think there's about 7 people that are ex-Red Tiger, the senior people that started it, and they went through a year of really struggling to get traction. It was like, the first couple of games didn't land the way they expected them to land. There was a lot of changing in terms of how they did things. And then I think in the last 2 years, we've kind of had that click, the kind of product market fit thing. And the business has just been growing like a train. I think as we were talking about, it was like we're now bigger than we were when we sold Red Tiger, right? So it's like it's just been incredible growth that we've experienced in the last couple of years. But what the most interesting part about that was the first 12 months, we're all kind of scratching our heads going, we've done this before. We know what we're doing. Yeah. We know everyone, but it's just not working, right? But it takes, I think it took a lot of pivoting and changing and kind of ripping things up and starting again. And thankfully it's worked. So that's actually been I'd say maybe 20-30% of my time. I've fairly early when we sold Red Tiger back in 2019. One of the reasons was the changes that were coming down the track in online in the UK, and we felt it would make the market more challenging. The UK was our largest market. But one thing we thought was interesting was the land-based sector in the UK was had really fallen out of favour. It had been kind of declining, and the changes in FOBT regulations, etc. And we just felt that was an underloved sector with probably big opportunities, because the changes coming in online would kind of stop that migration towards the online sector. So we set up a chain of AGCs in the UK. That's now, I'd say it's one of the top 5 UK AGC chains. But that sector in the UK has been the fastest growing, so faster than online gaming, faster than online sports. So land-based UK has been a really growth spot. So that's gone incredibly well. We've taken a lot of market share there. So that's been a big success story. And then I'm also chairman of a sports business called SWA. And it's a very interesting business as well, which started in athlete welfare and performance, but has effectively realized very quickly that the machine learning algorithms they'd use to predict athlete performance or impact data, etc., could equally be applied to predicting the outcomes of sports events. But what's very specific or specifically interesting about them is they effectively use the same technology as like LLMs. It's and as an industry, as sports betting industry, it's so far behind in terms of how we use machine learning, how we use large language models to do sports prediction, and it's so open to being disrupted at that stage. So that's an industry, that's an area and a sector that I think is going to be massively disrupted in the last couple of years. And I think the guys in SWA, because of their background using this and coming from outside industry and looking at the problems, going, why would you solve them this way? This is not how you solve these problems. So that's been a very interesting journey. So that's a very interesting part, and probably something that is a bigger focus for me now is just looking at how to apply AI. And I know that's quite cliche now, everyone's saying it, but like what is the impact of AI going to be on the sector over the next 5 years? And that's where I'm spending a lot of my time at the moment.
All right, so you mentioned Octoplay there, Carl Elliottson, who you knew well and worked with at Red Tiger. Was that the natural way in to back someone who you knew how they worked, what they were about, their skill sets, etc., and a natural place to start, I guess, was it?
Yeah, and I think if I look across the business we've invested in, I'd say the majority of people that were involved and I've worked with in the past through some role, right? So definitely it adds the comfort factor, and there's a familiarity with how the people work and how you work with them. So yes, I think that's true. I think what I've learned, and going back to what I was saying earlier, is ultimately the success of business really comes down, as on startups, it's down to the people.
Yeah.
And what you're investing in really is the management team. And unless you're comfortable with how they work and how they execute, then I think it becomes very challenging, particularly if you want to be hands-on. And it de-risks it massively if you go, I've worked with these guys, I know I can work with them again. So yeah, to answer your questions, yes, it is almost like the lazy way, but it's all what I found is it works for me, that when you're comfortable with the management team, everything becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I dare say you're not going to go into details, and why would you? But you must have kissed a few frogs that didn't turn into princes as well.
Yes.
What are the sort of learnings from that, and why did they, without going into details, why did they not turn out to be what you thought they were?
Yeah, I think sometimes, like, yes, there's been, I can think of a couple of businesses that on paper were very interesting, or the market opportunity was quite big, and we failed to capture it. And I suppose, again, when I look back at it, and the learnings from it is, if it's the same point, right? Like, if you academically approach a thing, here's a big market that's growing fast, and if we have this should work. And one of the businesses that we looked at, like, really would have been first mover into a very big market now that's very hot, but we just executed really poorly, and that was down to we didn't have the right management team from the start. We used third-party technology which we didn't own, and that was a big learning at the start. Was like, from now as I sit here, it's like I wouldn't invest in a business that didn't own their own tech, right? Like, and I know that seems quite straightforward, but at the time we were like, look, this market's big, it's growing really fast. We haven't got time to build this in-house. Let's take something off the shelf and adapt it. And once you start running into problems of, oh, well, we kind of hacked this together to go to market quickly, it just doesn't work. And then when the management team don't feel ownership of it, suddenly all the key pieces of the agreement, you get a lot of finger pointing. Because I think what you find very quickly is it's never a straight line, and any of the businesses, never a straight line. And when it gets tough, it's inevitable that people start there's a bit of finger pointing, there's a bit of like blame shifting, right? And it's, if you're a cohesive team, that's a lot more minimal, and you kind of work through it and everyone's aligned. Where it's a kind of a weak management team, then you get into, it's not me, it's him, and that's when you find the wheels come off, right? Because very quickly that alignment just falls to pieces.
Yeah. So you've spotted that for next time, and hopefully won't go down that road again. Yeah, fair enough. When I look on LinkedIn, there appear to be quite a lot of people investing in iGaming. There's people like yourself who've done well at a particular company, made a few quid. Right, let's see what we can do with this. Is that a good thing, the fact that the industry's awash with money, or is it also, does it come with its own problems with sort of startups thinking this is easy?
Look, I think it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting industry insofar as there is a lot of angel investors, like a huge amount of people who've made money in the sector and want to put it to work in the sector. And that's at one end. And then you have the high end where you have Blackstone, CVC, etc. What we miss is institutional capital in the middle, right? So when a company gets to a scale of about 100 million, there's very few people that play in that space. And so I think you do get a lot of capital rushing towards these early stage startups. And what happens is they scale to a certain level and then fail to take it to grow from 100 million to 1 billion is really hard, because there isn't that institutional pool of capital available. So I think it's really positive, because it means we have a very vibrant startup ecosystem, where I think the challenge is you end up, and whenever you see exits in the sector, they tend to be clustered around that, like, kind of 50 to 100 million. Then you get a few that break above that, and then there's the billions. But there's very few examples of businesses that have been taken from medium-sized through to 1 billion. And that's I think that's one of the challenges. All the money is individual private investors, because a lot of institutional money won't touch the sector for ESG reasons and whatever. So it tends to be very competitive at the startup space, but it's missing something in the middle. And I think that's a challenge that the industry faces, is particularly when you get stuff like something very disruptive to an industry like ours, like AI comes along, and there just isn't a capital base to invest in it to really push it through. So everything becomes very much like a proliferation of almost like Me Too startups that are not that interesting. Like, we were talking about internally the number of game studios that have been started, right? And it's so easy to start a game studio, but it's so hard to make it work. And you see lots of people start it and they're making, we're going to do 6 games this year and we hope to get taken. But it just doesn't work, unless, like, one thing that Octoplay did well, or when we did it, is it was set up with scale in mind. And we had the financing behind it to say, we are willing to push it through because we're going to make this a big company. But if you're trying to start a small studio now, it's a very challenging road, and it's very difficult to make that work in the long term, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of competition that you're talking about there, but is there a lot of competition amongst investors as well? Do you look over your shoulder at other people and see what they're investing in, or
No, again,
it's
a very collegiate, like, people share stuff. You kind of you get comfortable with investing alongside people, you know. As I said, because there isn't kind of big institutional capital that's competing for deals, when something needs to be funded, it tends to be shared widely, and there's a lot of information sharing. So no, I think that on that side, it's actually a really positive. I think it's actually really positive. The startup ecosystem is actually, it's not competitive in any stretch. It's like there's always room. I think people are always willing to have a conversation if they can get more people, because ultimately it's such a small industry in some regards that you kind of just increase the chance of success.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't say it's competitive. I'd say it's actually quite collegiate, if anything.
Caring and sharing.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. One of my bugbears in this industry, and I've asked a few people this, so you might have heard it before, but is that we talk about innovation rather than doing innovation. And I guess from an investment point of view, you probably get weary of people telling you that they've got an innovative new idea and it actually just looks like something you saw the other week. Is that one of our challenges as an industry, that we're risk averse, aren't we? Because we like we like gamble with other people's money rather than our own. But is that a problem for an investor?
I always find it's almost like a lazy thing. Oh, there's no innovation in this industry. And I think it's like kind of boiling frogs, because if you stand back and you go, where we've come from in a short period of time, the amount of big step changes in the industry. Now, it is when someone gets something right, it's a huge amount of copycats, right? So it's like a follow fast industry. It's not, there isn't, let's say, a culture of continuous leaping ahead, right? So kind of someone gets something and then there's a rush behind it. But, you know, if you think of the history of the migration from land-based to online to mobile, and how that has changed over time against the backdrop of a lot of regulatory changes. Like, I think if you came from a digital business from outside the industry and came in and said, the complexity of operating multi-market on one tech stack in this industry is very hard to do, right? So I think people, I sometimes feel it's a bit lazy to say it's not innovative, but certainly there's a lot of copycatting, right? So I think more so what I see is when innovation happens in the industry, it's always quite subtle. Like, if you let's take when I started in the industry, which was 2010, right? So 15 years ago. And at the time, the big thing that we had in Paddy Power, where we had an advantage over our competitors, was around in-play betting. And that was the huge thing. Sorry, we had an advantage, but then there was 365 who were out there in a different bracket at the time. And in-play betting was all people talked about. And then cash out happened. And that was a big disruptive innovation that occurred. And then everyone jumped on the cash out thing. You had to have cash out. But then that kind of evolved into this same game parlay or bet builder product, which happened around 2015. But now, like, the complexity of the bet builder product that's evolved. So it's not like it's stood still, right? The product has evolved, but on the face of it, if you look at it and go, well, what new has happened? We're actually, all those things that happened have taken a huge amount of investment from an engineering perspective, from even customer familiarization. So, as I said, I think a lot more innovation happens that we don't give ourselves credit for. You know?
Yeah, fair enough. So maybe not the cliche I thought it was, but one thing that is a cliche, but you probably were responsible for it becoming a cliche, is the term rocket ship.
Yeah.
And what gave you the capital to invest in Willow Park, obviously, or to use with Willow Park, was Red Tiger. Having been a tiny, small part of that journey in terms of helping with a bit of PR and marketing around it, it was quite stunning to see how quickly that business grew, how successful that business became, and obviously took it through to a fantastic sale, which I think, you know, a lot of slot studios would love to go for the kind of money that it went for. But it went for that money for a reason. Why was that business so successful?
I think one of the things that made Red Tiger successful was the team behind it all came from the operator side. So for the first, I would say the first time we came at it to solve, and actually I'd say even I'd add to that and saying, because that team came out of an internal studio in Paddy Power, the kind of the main management team, and Paddy Power Betfair was its first major client, we evolved the business because we were thinking about how to solve the problem. At the time I was their main customer, and I was like, these are the problems I'd like to solve. These are the challenges I see. This is what, and they evolved to solve those problems. And then when we went out to the market to kind of beyond that, it was quite funny because you kind of go, we've built this business, but then you're learning, oh, well, actually, the world isn't just Paddy Power Betfair, right? There's a whole world beyond that. But I think because we started from solving problems that we wanted to solve ourselves, that we experienced in an operator, there was things that we did, going back to innovation, that were very innovative at the time, which aren't, like, I'll give you an example, which is amusing now in a world where an operator releases 100 games a week. At the time, NetEnt used to release 12 games a year. And we were releasing 2 games a month. And people thought this was madness. They're like, 2 games a month, Now that everyone does 2 games a month, but at the time, and the reason we could do that was our technology was very modern and it was very quick for us to do this. But like, even as simple as we taught mobile first, right? A lot of people at that time were still building desktop games and mobile games. And we were like, well, we just have 1 game. People were like, this is amazing. And so a lot of the stuff that we did really well from an execution perspective back then seems very tired now because everyone does it. It's just become the norm. But at the time, it was really small things that operators really appreciated. Going, this is just making my life easier. This is exactly what we need. So I think that was one of the key ingredients of our success was we knew the problems we were trying to solve. We weren't just making games for game's sake. It was thinking about how do we solve an operator's problem at the same time.
And one of the successful things that you became well known for quite quickly was jackpots.
Yeah.
This might be a devil's advocate question. It might be an unfair question, but relatively good games, but no standout amazing games, but an amazing jackpot system. And that was what Red Tiger became, really.
Yeah, but what I used to say to people at the time, casino managers, was we made the best above average games in the industry.
Right.
We never had the standout type.
Yeah,
we never had your book of it. Exactly. It was like, and because we didn't have them, it meant that we never let our standards slip. Because people were kind of going, well, you're not Starburst at the time or Book of Dead. But it was like, I used to show me your last 10 releases and tell me where we rank in them. Oh yeah, you're kind of 5 of the top 10 releases. There you go. So what I used to say is like, we'll consistently be above average and we hope that we'll get there. And I think we would have, if you think of the length of time it takes to build a studio, because we did it in such a short period of time. But if you look at the big studios around now, like Pragmatic or Hacksaw or whatever, they've been going for 10 years. It kind of takes 10 years to build a really big studio footprint.
To be an overnight success.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And we I think what happened, we sold so quickly, our journey to sell. I joined Red Tiger in April 2017. I think it was April 2017 because I agreed to join them in 2016. Started in April 2017. We'd sold the business by September 2019, right? So it was, it really was like a huge. And then when we went into NetEnt, obviously we start building games within NetEnt, and we had, I still remember Gonzo's Quest Megaways, which at the time was probably the biggest slots launch of the time of taking proven IP. But even at that was again one of the first examples of taking well-known IP and making a sequel of it. Now, if you look at how the industry's evolved from then, back then it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's like Gonzo's, but a bit different. Now, just these game families that have emerged where, there's, whether it's the way Pragmatic do it in terms of their 1000 series, or you look at Blueprint or Big Bass Bonanza, or, these game families have just become a staple of the industry, which makes sense in a world where games only last a short period of time. So recapitalizing on that IP makes sense. But all these things were, go back to innovative at the time, just since then it's become like, well, what did they do anyway? And it's like, well, actually we did a lot of really interesting things at the time. It's just they've become par for the course since then,
So look, old hat, but they weren't,
exactly.
Back then. Yeah, fair enough. I always wondered, and this might be total nonsense because most of my stuff is, but it almost felt like a reverse takeover when NetEnt bought you, because to me, and this might be really unfair, they felt like they were on the wane. They felt like, they'd had their day in the sun. You were the sort of progressive new kid on the block with the brilliant jackpot system we've talked about. They had the good games, but they were legacy games, and it was the perfect marriage because you could put the jackpots onto Gonzo's Quest and other games that we talked about there. Is that fair? I mean, was it kind of, or did it?
I think it was a business that had accumulated a lot of legacy issues. Even from a technology standpoint, they were constrained by decisions they made 10 years ago. And as a listed company, it's always hard to dig yourself out of that, because it's always the next annual report or the next quarterly update that you manage for, right? So the heavy lifting on the tech side was huge. And I think because we, going back to what we knew, what was important to operators, and you're kind of going, well, there's just a mismatch between what your technology allows you to do versus what an operator expects now, and what Pragmatic are delivering, and what the big guys are. So and it was known internally. Like, it wasn't like I came in and was like saying, oh, and they're like, what? No one told me. They knew the problems they had, and I think it was a brave acquisition by Therese Hillman at the time to buy Red Tiger, because you're going to bet the house on that deal. And so I wouldn't say it was I'd say it was more of a catalyst for change, which was already taking place before we arrived. Like, Rob and Andy had joined from GVC, and there was the kind of a appetite at management level to change things. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was a reverse takeover. It was more, we probably provided the skill set that they needed to accelerate the change that they knew needed to happen. But it was a very interesting period, because it coincided with COVID, and it coincided when I joined. The big markets, obviously Red Tiger was very UK centric. They were very Scandinavian, and then overnight the US just took off, and it was like, our biggest market is the US. And that was, it wasn't a strategy. That was just like, wait, what's happening over here? So I think it was a very interesting time that the deal happened, the journey that we had to go on, and then COVID just completely transforming everything overnight, and obviously very quickly. And we'd only started the turnaround plan, and we were starting to really, we had a clear plan. But it was the start of a 5-year journey we were on. We knew we were signing up to a very long process in NetEnt, and so that deal went through in September 2019. COVID happened, and then Evolution announced the acquisition in June in 2020. So kind of like suddenly it was like, oh my God, we were only getting started.
Yeah,
and that created a huge amount of uncertainty from the time the acquisition was announced to when it completed. So it was a very strange period.
So is it fair to say that you were invested in the future when it was NetEnt, but the Evolution changed the goalposts or moved the playing field or whatever it might be? And then it was, I mean, how much of that part of your career was just for the earn out, and how much of it was for actually, I'm enjoying this? Having been CEO of Red Tiger and seeing that progress, and then it's not your thing, it's somebody else's thing.
I always say, but certainly on NetEnt, I was very bought into the bigger project. I really enjoyed that. The scale of that challenge was very exciting. Evolution had very clear ideas about how they wanted to do it, and it was understood very early that they wanted product to be run as a central thing under Todd, which made sense. But that moved me into just pure commercial, which I wasn't as interested in. So I think during Evolution, I probably was just waiting for the final piece of the earn out to click before I left. But having said that, and I say it to the guys in Octoplay now, what I learned in Evolution, and when I look back on it, is when we sold Red Tiger, I'd say we were the exact same size as Pragmatic Play, right? We were like neck and neck, and they would have been our main competition. And Pragmatic's success since then, I don't think we would have achieved in Red Tiger under my leadership. When I look back and I go, I think we would have hit a ceiling, because...
It's quite honest.
Yeah, but I learned that in Evolution, because I was kind of going, wow, these people think globally, whereas we were very Malta-centric, and we knew the guys in the UK, but certainly we wouldn't have been setting up offices in Africa and setting up offices in Latin America. It just wouldn't have happened, right? So I think that's maybe the thing in Octoplay, which I remind them every day, going, we've done the Red Tiger size. Like, I'm only interested in this if we believe we can be as big as Pragmatic,
right.
So and that takes a different way of thinking about how we grow that business, so that's the one thing I did really enjoy about Evolution, is like they were streets ahead of us in terms of their global vision. It wasn't just Malta, the Malta bubble.
Yeah, of course. Malta, as you say, sat here chatting as we are. Now you're home. is it your forever home, as they say, with dogs that are rehomed? Or, I mean, talk to me, change of pace that I know, but business, obviously very invested in business, and this is what it's about. But from a family point of view and from a kind of moving from Ireland point of view, what's Malta been like for you, and do you see yourself being here for a while? Or
yeah, it's a funny question. We actually just bought a house in Ireland, so the family are going to be moving back because kids are at school age or secondary school age. But yeah, we've loved it here. It's been a great place for us in terms of just one. Again, it's something I've been talking about in the office. The experience. I always worked in the UK and Ireland market. That was my thing when I was in Ireland. I used to spend 3 days a week in London and 2 days in Dublin. And but when you come over here, and it's every nationality in the world, and it gives you such a kind of a very interesting perspective on different cultures and how things are done. And so it's been hugely rewarding personally to be over here and to be out of the, even though Malta's a small island, it's the industry we're in is very international looking, and then going back to Ireland will be very much more insular. So really, really enjoyed the time here. I'll stay here because the businesses are here and kind of commute back and forth. But my children can't even pronounce Irish names now, so I need to get them back to educate them.
Back to civilization.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I've realised actually we've not talked very much about Ireland and about Paddy Power and how that came about, because you started off as a chartered accountant, right? Yeah. And then how did you get into Paddy Power? And then a sort of subsidiary question to that was Casino, which you went into at Paddy Power, the kind of unsung hero at Paddy Power. Everyone knows about the marketing, everyone knows about the innovation in sportsbook, etc. But were you the kind of bridesmaid rather than bride in Casino?
Yeah, sir. That's exactly what it was. So I joined Paddy's in 2010. It's like a lifetime ago, but back in 2008, you may remember the world collapsed.
Indeed.
And Ireland was us, Greece, Spain, and Portugal were kind of. It wasn't a great time to be working in banking in Ireland, to put it that way. So I needed a new career, and there wasn't many people hiring in Ireland at the time, and. So I actually joined what is now Fortuna, the Czech. They had a business in Croatia, or they have a business in Croatia called Hattrick, which had an Irish investor. And he said, look, why don't you go over here? We've just invested in this very interesting business. So I did that for 6 months, and for a couple of reasons, I basically got approached by Paddy's, and they said, why don't you join the M&A team in Paddy's? So I started in M&A. In Paddy's, and we didn't do much M&A. I laugh when I look at Flutter now. The amount of deals they've done. I was in M&A in Paddy's for 3 years and did one deal, and it was like we looked at everything but did nothing. But that one deal I did was the acquisition of the in-house studio, which that team became Red Tiger, and so it was a good deal to do because it's worked well for me. But what happened as a result of that deal, I kind of became the casino expert in the team, because it was very much a secondary, as you said, the bridesmaid in the organization. No one, it was really seen as a conduit for cross-selling sports, monetizing some sports customers that they got, in the Grand National. And at the time, I was looking at this recently, 58% of Paddy Power's revenue at the time was sports, 42% was gaming. Mm-hmm. But that was, if you look at the gambling commission statistics, that was broadly the industry split. But within that 42% that was casino, I'd say at the time, 50% of it was just blackjack and roulette, right? So slots was a very small part of the business, albeit growing. If you look at that now, it's now the largest vertical in the UK and I for Flutter is casino, and now it's 80% slots, right? But also within the UK industry, casino is much bigger than sports. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of this was triggered by COVID and the change when sports events just disappeared, and customers just had this mass familiarization with slots because it was an always on product. But certainly it's now a thing where I think the big organizations, the big sports books, legacy sports books are waking up going, actually, most of our customers, this journey that we had in our mind that they come in from sports and then play some casino, actually casino is now a destination in its own right. The majority of our customers are acquired first into casino and will never place a sports bet. Yeah. So I don't know whether so it's definitely it's a part of the business that I've obviously been exposed to from a long time, but it's gone from being, as you said, the bright to now being a thing where I think a lot of the big sportsbook led operations are going, wait, our overhead of running a sports business is this. casino is a lot lower, and actually most of our players come to play casino first. So it's a very interesting space to be in, and I think it'll continue to grow the casino side. It's grown 4 times. Again, I'll go back to a point I said, just in terms of our growth, not the play that we've had. We're still a lot smaller by market share than Red Tiger was, but the casino industry is so much bigger that it's just a huge business now.
The wheel has turned. Yeah. Cool. All right. Listen, we always finish these interviews with 3 quickfire questions. You can be as quickfire as you like, to be honest. But if I was to put you on the spot, favourite band or musician?
Oh God, it's a good question. LCD sound system.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Interesting. You're supposed to say U2, obviously. That's fine. There are other bands out there. That's cool. Last meal on Earth, what would it be?
Last meal on Earth.
If you could choose, obviously.
I've been asked this question before, and I really have never had a good answer for it. I eat everything, so just any food, I suppose.
Fair enough. Yeah. That's all right. It's an answer. That'll do. And if you had one bit of advice for the next generation of iGaming execs, maybe some who will be listening to this looking for investment, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think that we're in a really interesting industry, right? It's really at the frontier of a lot of the big kind of macro developments of technology, and there's just such a huge it's just a great industry to be exposed to a lot of really interesting things. And what I do see, or what if I say the next level, or the junior people I see, they try force their careers too early. Everyone wants to be senior yesterday, and instead of just kind of going, I'm willing to go on the journey and learn and be exposed to different things. I think a lot of people want to just get to the end very quickly nowadays. They have this inflated expectation of, I want to be here now, and it's kind of like, I think so my advice is just be exposed to as many things as possible, because it's an incredible industry for opportunity and for growth. And if you're open-minded and curious, it just opens up huge opportunities. So that's the thing. Stay curious, I think.
Enjoy the journey as well. Well, listen, Willow Park's on an interesting journey, I'm sure. I look forward to watching it progress and watch you progress within the industry. But appreciate you joining us today, and best of luck for the future.
Thanks very much. Cheers.